fly ball to center field that sends Bellinger back onto the track, at the wall. Bellinger brings it back. A robbery from Cody Bellinger, taking a home run away from the guy that he's traded places with. Here's first drive after the Youngway crew missed field goal. Justin Fields to work, has DJ Moore into the breadbasket. This year and years past knows why he's supposed to be doing certain things, like throwing the ball deep to DJ Moore. Third down and goal. Fields flings that corner. Moore. Touchdown.
So glad to see them doing it alive.
Why? Now Bedard again. And he scores. What a play!
Bennington. No chance at all for the Blues netminders. Connor Bedard.
Bedard now. Main Street. He scores!
Hello, Chicago. Welcome to Chicago Sports Podcast, Monsters of the Madhouse, the voice of Chicago sports fans. We're coming to you live from Bridges Scoreboard, your Northwest Indiana Chicago sports headquarters with a Hall of Fame menu. I'm your man, Brandon Trax Hyatt, and tonight we're here with the Chicago Deer, Bobby Dernier. Look at all the love out there. It's awesome. Bobby Dernier electrified Chicago baseball fans in the 80s as one of the half of the Cubs Daily Double, as Hall of Fame announcer Harry Carey nicknamed him. Teaming with Hall of Famer Ryan Sandberg, Bobby Dernier gave the Cubs the National League's most kinetic 1-2 lineup punch, along with the blistering speed of the base pass and brilliant Gold Glove center field defense, where he covered literally everything outside of Lake Michigan. He's the Chicago Deer, still running like a deer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cubs legend Bobby Dernier to the Madhouse. Hey, Bobby. Once upon a baseball time, there was a fleet-footed kid growing up in Kansas City who fell in love with baseball as a kid. What about our national pastime drew you to baseball?
Well, back in our, the old guys in here like me will attest to this. We played every game. I mean, it was a backyard thing, and playing baseball, football, basketball. I even had skates on when I was 4 or 5 years old, playing hockey and tennis and golf, you name it. We played my dad rolled every ball out in the living room floor, and whatever season it was, we picked up that ball, and that's what we did. So I think from an early childhood on, Brandon, I always had a special affection for baseball, but when I was 10 years old, I loved playing football. We talked about that on the way down.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And
we should have started the podcast then. That was some good stuff.
Yeah. And he asked me, what caused you to be so fast? I said, well, guys the size of you chasing me to the sideline, that created a certain level of quickness. And so really it was just, I think in our era, we had the luxury of playing every sport.
Yeah. And you know what? You were talking about the importance of being a multi-sport person and what that was for you, but you were running like a deer at an early age. Have you always been that fast?
Well, I can't remember not being fast. That was I was also, when you're one of the littlest guys on the team, little and it's relative, but I was 6 foot and 165 pounds when I played. And I'm not far off of that now. I shrunk a little bit, gained a little bit of weight, but I think when you're a smaller type player, I was always a leadoff hitter from the time I can remember. And part of that role was being a guy who could run the bases. And so it was kind of a natural. I give the good Lord a lot of credit there. He set me up for success in that regard. And I just always took that role on as a kind of a pride piece that I'm the guy who's going to be on base when the big guys come up.
We talked earlier about this, but at what point did you know that you were fast?
Well, like I said, when I was about 10, I was playing Little League football, and I can remember, guys that were bigger but I was faster. So I think I learned in that regard, and even playing basketball, I was a point guard, so I was one of the faster guys out there, can move the ball up and down the court and get the ball to the guys who could shoot. So really with every sport, other than, of course, when I was skating, I could fly on skates too. So, just every sport I played, for the most part, I tried to inject speed into it.
I mean, it's safe to say right now, even with the age gap, pretty sure in a 40-yard dash you could take me. So,
Yeah, you probably still lose today. I'm 67. I probably still get.
Yeah, exactly. So, when did you know you wanted to take a run at making the show?
Well, I was in what they call a free agent signee. I wasn't drafted. Well, I was drafted by the Reds in what was known as the winter draft back in '77.
Oh, wow. That's when I was born.
Yeah. So, but they did what they call a draft and follow. So they drafted me, and then I was going into my spring season in junior college, my sophomore year, and I played that spring, and then the June draft came, and I didn't get drafted by anyone. So went on into the rest of the summer, and that was in '77. And there was a scout named Bill Kelso with the Phillies who was looking at a couple of pitchers that I was playing with in the summertime, and he took a liking to me, and he was able to, although the Phillies weren't overly excited about signing me, Bill wasn't going to take no for an answer, and somehow he dug up a contract for a whopping, I think I signed for $1,200 and a $500 a month salary in rookie ball.
Oh, wow.
And I had a full ride scholarship to Wichita State and University of Kansas to ponder over, and my heart told me this may be the only chance I have, and so I rolled the dice.
There you go. And another thing you rolled the dice in is journalism at Longview Community College. You majored in. What was your plan B if you got thrown out before reaching the majors?
Well, I think I had a somewhat of a plan B, but I was really so wholeheartedly into plan A and giving that a full effort. I never really, fully considered it, but because I did like to write, I was into the journalist type of stuff, and I don't know. I also had some ideas about maybe jumping into law, and I'm glad it worked out like it did. But if I was going to be greedy, if I wanted to do it over, I still would have liked to have had that 4-year college experience under my belt, but instead I had A ball and AA with some guy named Sandberg in the Phillies minor league systems.
And I like about the community college, the long route, it shows like your stick-withedness, and everybody always wants to be locked into D1. And that's not necessarily the first go-to. And I think, when you talk about talent and effort and working hard, I think, talent is second, and working hard is first, because hard work can beat talent if talent doesn't work hard. But what's cool about your story is you had both. It might have took a little bit longer going that route, but it was still a really good ending. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. There was a long line of scouts and others that thought I had no chance, I'm sure. But there was a shorter line, maybe that I had a good support system, family,
Yeah.
and I remember my dad telling me, just trust your heart. My mom said, go to college. That was a smart thing to do. But I just went ahead and kind of went with what I felt inside, that I felt like I got to go now because this may be the only chance I get.
Yeah.
And you guys know out there that are listening in, any of our moms could go out and scout Bryce Harper or Mike Trout and say, boy, they might be good big leaguers, Chris Bryant, some of those cats, number 1 picks. But most of us come from other places, and so the way baseball sort of weeds us out is through the minor leagues, and that's where you earn your stripes. And I don't care if you're number 1 pick or undrafted free agent. If you go out and perform well, you're going to move along in the minor leagues, and eventually you're going to earn a chance. And I was one of those guys.
And you know what? You sound like you came from a good support system, a good mom and dad, a good home, and all of that. What's one thing you could say for a kid that's out there that's kind of like on the fence, like, I don't know if I could do the community college or D3 ball, kind of like getting in the head of, where they might hear that it's D1 or nothing at all. You know what I mean? What could you say to those kids that are out there trying to aspire to be another, Bobby Dernier, the Deer?
Yeah, well, and I go. The timing's good because next month and later this month, I go visit some grade schools where I grew up in Raytown, and it's a little suburb of Kansas City, and we do address, and talk to the kids about what I like to call dreams come true.
Wow.
And that is that, if you believe it in your heart, you got a little faith, and you're willing to work hard. I don't care what you're dreaming, you got a chance to make that come true. So for me, it was kind of that was the whole methodology for me. I believed in me and trusted that if I work hard, I got a chance to succeed. Until they told me to go home, and 12 years later they did. I was going to keep going out there and giving my best effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Friends, this year resolved to get in the most fun in fantasy sports. Get the W with the official fantasy sports partner of Chicago Sports Podcast, Underdog Fantasy. Enter your bid by using the special CSP promo code when you sign up with UnderdogFantasy.com. Chicago Sports Podcast users will receive 100% deposit match up to $100 when they use the CSP sign-in code. Give 5 picks, right, and you will multiply your money 20 times. It's simple. It's fast. It's mega fun. It's Underdog Fantasy, the official gaming partner of the Chicago Sports Podcast. We're visiting with former Cubs star Bobby Dernier on the voice of the Chicago sports fan. Monsters of the Madhouse coming to you live from Bridges Scoreboard, your Northwest Indiana sports headquarters. Bob, whether you were batting leadoff or hitting ninth, what did you try to bring to the field each game, no matter who you're playing?
Boy, that's a good question. First of all, I was always a leadoff hitter, and I wasn't a pitcher, so I never hit ninth. But I did hit eighth a little bit in my young career, and I didn't like that at all. I think as a leadoff hitter, one thing to mention there is that, and I think it still applies today, and we might touch on this later. Part of the personality of a good offense, and you Cub fans know, best team you ever had, and maybe our team was one of the second or third best teams you ever had. I don't know, but we were pretty good. And one thing that the 2016 Cub team had in common with us is Dexter Fowler. And a leadoff hitter is critical, I think, to a team success in the way of personality. I took it upon myself and took a lot of pride in being the guy who was on base, especially to start the game. Get your team off to an offensive role to begin with, and the other guys feed off that. Rhino certainly loved it. Gary Matthews and all those cats I played with. If I was on base, our offense got going, and so I looked at it sort of like that. And I think just as a philosophy for winning, even Theo Epstein will tell you that was part of the equation. And Dexter, nobody did it better than he did that year in 2016.
Oh, baby. And the minute we lost him, I just had that gut feeling like, man, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to make this up because it's hard to come by. Let's go ahead and reach out to a couple people out there in YouTube land and Facebook. Let's start off really quick with Melissa on that YouTube account. It says, "Hi, Grandpa. It is Isaiah." So that.
Oh yeah, that's my 11-year-old, and I have my boys Dustin, Derek, and Michael are out there. I notified them when you sent the info, so I told them, hey, if you guys want to listen in, we'll be doing this, and but they're hard on me, Brandon. They like to tease me, and my golf buddies at home, Danny Maddox and Ron Underwood and Greg Bloss are back home. I think they're listening in too, and they'll be needling me pretty hard. So be ready for something.
You're saying they might be poking holes in our show a little bit. Okay, I'll be ready for it. Cheryl, great longtime listener of ours, and also she puts all the birthdays up for our group. We've got a small Chicago Sports Podcast group. She'll put the birthdays and what's everybody having up for dinner. She knows we got like 3,100 members. She knows everybody's birthday, including all of the sports players. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I got to actually get a hold of some sports players that I have in my phone. I'm like, happy birthday. And they're like, well, thank you.
Yeah,
So-
mine was about 6 days ago.
I don't have that one. She probably put it up and I didn't see it. I won't.
We get cheated this time of year because it's right after Christmas.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Also, Cheryl wanted to know, what is your opinion of today's Cubs? What do you think?
Well, I like them. Last year, I thought, of course, we were right on the cusp of getting to the playoffs, and personality of the team I like. I'm a Nico Horner and Ian Happ guy. I think the personality of the team, Suzuki,
yeah.
they've got energy. They play with energy, and they're fun to watch. So Bellinger, what a year he had, and on and on. I mean, I like the personality of the team. I think, like a lot of teams, pitching's it's always a stickler, and I think if they put some pitching with that group, we'll see how they treat the free agency guys that are out there, and of course with Bellinger being a big guy in that discussion. I'm not sure how it's all going to fall out, but I can tell you this: I won't be bashful, and I'll ask Tom and Jed what's going on tomorrow night.
There you go. I'd like to be a fly on the wall in that room. That'd be cool. Cheryl wants to know, what do the Cubs need to do to get back to the division and NL division championships? What do you think it would take?
Yeah, we just hit on a little bit. I mean, like pitching. I mean, if we're healthy with pitching, I think the offense, they've got the personality by and large in place. Maybe adding a third baseman. I think we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah,
that's something that I think they're looking at.
And then you touched about the coach. You're really happy about the coach, the signing. You think that could
the manager, Craig Counsell, I mean, we all love David Ross.
We did.
That's a flip the coin thing there, but
you look at that roster that they had over the last 4 or 5 years over there in Milwaukee. They're not household names, and for them to lead the Central, have 92 wins last year, that in itself speaks, volume. And maybe he could push the needle on some of what he sees already in our roster, and maybe get some of that, magic going for us.
It could be. I can tell you as a player, you really, all you ask of your manager really is you want him to write your name in the lineup every day.
Yeah, right.
And then after that, just be smart about how he runs the game. And in today's world, I mean, with the bench coaches, all the different roles guys have and being an old coach too, I love how that's evolved, and guys take a lot of the pressure off the managers. They can kind of do what they got to do and not worry about a lot of the minutia.
Yeah,
because they've got guys handling that.
Right.
You really can't go wrong with Ross or Counsell, in my opinion.
No,
but
yeah.
It'll be nice to welcome Craig to the group tomorrow night.
Yeah, I was a little disheartened about. I'm not gonna lie, I really like Papa, but it is what it is, and moving forward, we got to put our best foot forward, and have faith that we're going in the right direction. I think it's quite possibly they say that was the best pickup that you could have picked up out of any manager to get signed on.
Yeah, once he became available, I think it's hard to resist.
Right.
And I'm sure there were several other teams that were biting at the bit there.
Yeah.
And so, Jed and Tom, they make those decisions. And here we go.
Here we go. Hopefully the Bears are paying attention, right? DA Dernier 22 from YouTube says, "Hey Bobby D, even when you stink, you look like you're trying." Harry Carey.
Yeah, that's my oldest son, so he comes by that humor honestly, and I've shared with him many times that people will ask me, give me a recollection of Harry Carey, and I shared the story that in Montreal one night about midnight on a Saturday night, we were gathering at the bar for last call and getting ready to head up to the rooms. We got a Sunday game and getaway day, and that was typical back then. I know it's shocking to hear that Harry was at the bar at the hotel, but anyway, I was walking by him and he said, "Hey, Bobby, come here. I want you to meet a friend of mine." And some guy named Jacques, who owned a hotel there in Montreal and a restaurant that Harry ate at all the time. So nice to meet you. And I was going through about an 0 for 12 or some kind of 0 for 13 little streak. And Harry said, "Bobby," he said, "I just got to tell you something. Even when you stink, you look like you're trying. You'll never get booed at home." And so he remembers that, and that's where that Harry Carey line comes from.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Here's one from YouTube. Good old American ketchup covered funnies. There's only one thing that covers ground around Wrigley faster than Bobby Dernier, and that's a John Deere tractor.
Yeah, I think that's my youngest son. So they're hitting on. And back in that day, I did a commercial for John Deere tractors, and they did it in spring training and filmed it, and whatever they paid me, right? You know, probably small change compared to today, but
Right.
whatever it was. And then when we were done, pardon me, I asked them, just because I could, I was sitting on this tractor. I said, "What are you guys going to do with this tractor?" They said, "I don't know. Do you want it?" And I said, "Yeah." So I mailed it home to my cousin, and he had a riding mower to do his lawn for years that he loved from John Deere. And so there's a picture of that the kids remember, and I think that's probably what he's alluding to there.
Oh, cool.
And back to Harry for just a second.
Yeah.
Harry, one thing he appreciated was full effort. And so if you gave an effort, which, of course, Rhino, myself, other guys, we always ran the ball out. We didn't loaf or let our defense suffer if we were struggling at the plate. And Harry always appreciated that. That's why that line came, even when you stink, you look like you're trying, so you won't get booed. If you popped it up and you didn't run it out, and you were making $1 million a year or whatever, you were an old veteran or something, boy, he didn't care for that.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of where Harry, he was a fan with a beer and a mic, and he wasn't afraid to say what was on his mind.
Yeah.
And so we all knew that.
Yeah.
So you give him an effort, he won't badmouth you.
Dano Blake says, need more grinders in today's game, like Bobby was. It's a lost art. True spark plug. All right, let's get back to the questions. You played in MLB's small ball glory days. So you feel like that's kind of like coming back a little bit from the 80s. I mean, you had a loaded era of great base runners. One of my all-time favorites, aside from you, was Sticky Ricky Henderson, the GOAT, Vince Coleman, and Tim Raines. How did you try to change games on the base pass? And for, you were like a very fast, not so reckless base stealer.
Well, in base running, it's first and foremost, it takes a real good concentration level, and we were talking about it on the way down, a feet to eye coordination, which in baseball we talk a lot about hand eye, because hitting, naturally, but a lot of baseball defense, base running has to do with feet to eye, what you see, how quick your brain can process that to your feet and make that move on an instant. So for me, base stealing was that. It was but it also, and really base running period is truly, it's like special teams in football. It's kind of the dirty job. And so I took it upon myself. I knew with my style of game and my talent that I had to give a full effort all the time. And so on the bases, if there was one part of the game that I knew I could dominate, it was running the bases and stealing bases, and that translated well to defense. And I tell my wife all the time, hitting's a bad girlfriend. It shows up when it feels like it. But good defense and good base running is like a good wife. You can count on 98.6 like your temperature. It's there every day. So bring that to the ballpark, whether you go 0 for 4 or 4 for 4, you're going to have a good day in some kind of way because you have that sort of approach to the game. So for me, base running was, first of all, it was like taking candy from a baby, as far as, because I knew the clock. I knew I could get there before they could get the ball there in a lot of ways. And then it was the one way I could take advantage, of the gift that good Lord placed inside of me. And I was going to go out there every day and try to use it.
Yeah. It almost seems like the running was in many ways easier to you than the actual hitting.
Hitting's and today we were talking about this again on the way down. Hitting, I give the guys credit today. I think it's harder to hit today, in my opinion. I mean, they face 100 mile an hour all the time. Believe me, it was no picnic facing Doc Gooden or Nolan Ryan or any of those cats that were throwing 100, but I give them credit. I think they work hard at it. They're well coached, more so than we didn't really have hitting coaches. My first hitting coach was Billy Williams in 1987. And I was already in the big leagues for 8 years. So, it was not really, it didn't become a thing until later in the 80s. And then, of course, we know what it's evolved into. Now you got 25 different guys that can help you hitting, coaching wise. And, but by and large, you will learn most of what you learn about hitting from your teammates. I mean, being on deck with Pete Rose in Philadelphia as a young player, that was huge. It was like being on deck with Einstein. Became the hitting. Then I came through the minor leagues with Rhino, and we were talking, about hitting and approaches and different stuff. So I had some guys to count on: Mike Schmidt, Gary Matthews. I had a lot of great hitters that I could tap into.
Yeah, let's go back to Rhino. You had that 1-2 punch in '84. Did you guys have like instant chemistry right away?
Well, first of all, I was on 10-hour bus rides in the minor leagues. Sandberg and I used to headphone back then. You old guys will remember the Walkman. We had a Walkman and headphones. And so we would tap into this dual thing, and we'd listen to the same music for 8-10 hours on a bus ride. So Rhino wouldn't say a word. We wouldn't have a lot of conversations on the bus. You were sleeping or listening to music or playing cards. Maybe that's when we could kind of stir Rhino up a little bit. But we became friends mainly from being on deck together. And I played third base as a young minor leaguer, and he was playing shortstop. And then eventually I moved to center. But on the field, at the ballpark, during the games, pre-games, and so on. And we palled around. We had little kids, and the First Wife Club. We all had a first wife back then, and so we were friends. And we talked. But Rhino was more. He was more concentrated and more focused on what he was doing every day than any guy I ever played with. Nobody came to the ballpark and was prepared to play day after day more than Ryan Sandberg. So in that way, I tried to emulate him as much as possible and be his teammate, be on base for him. And I took all the pop-ups. He hated pop-ups. When those pop-ups came between second and center field, I knew I had responsibility for those. And, to this day, I was honored to be his leadoff hitter and to be behind him as a center fielder and teammate, and along with all those guys. But Rhino and I, because we came through the minor leagues together, played together 7 years, I got to know him as a person. And I can tell you, nobody has maintained the same heartbeat, so to speak, for the 50 years I've known him, 45 years I've known him than Rhino. He's the same guy.
Wow. After 40 years of you being called the Daily Double, can you believe that it still has stuck to this day when Harry Carey first dubbed you the Daily Double?
Yeah, and he liked the lottery, and Harry liked the horse track.
Yeah.
And so that's where that sort of came from. And it has stuck. And I still have people, write letters or whatever, or talk over the convention and at the ballpark at Wrigley during the summertime when I'm up. They still bring that up. And that's still again, it's an honor. It will always be an honor to be side by side with him, or hit in front of him, or play behind him. And all of that is a fond memory. And we'll reflect on that this weekend. But make no mistake about it, nobody's up to it, up to like shenanigans, like lighting your shoestrings on fire or something like that to Sandberg. He's always up to something. So you got to keep your eye on him. I can tell you firsthand experience.
Sounds like some of the stories I heard about Walter Payton too. What was the secret of the '84 Cubs' wild success and their enduring popularity?
I'll give you a short story from, and Stacy, we were up doing the Joe Madden thing up at Club 400 last summer with Jody Davis. And so Jody and I conspired, and we thought, hey, we'll stir Joe up a little bit here. And so we posed the question. He was taking Q&A from an audience up at a big group out in the suburbs of Chicago. And so Jody and I got in the back room there, and we said, well, let's go up and ask a question. So we went up front, and of course, being the old leadoff hitter, I started off and I said, so Joe, Jody and I want to know if you had to draft your team from just the 1984 and the 2016 roster, who you got? And we'll start right from the top. Who you got, me or Dexter? And he said, well, I'll take Bobby Fowler. And I said, that's a good answer. So, and then we moved on, and we got to Jody. I said, so who you got? You got the tripod. They had David Ross, Contreras, and Montero, or Jody. Well, the crowd started pausing on that. I heard Jody. So anyway, then we got to the manager, and we said, well, Jody and I talked about it. We love Jimmy Fry, who was our manager. I said, but if we had a choice, we had you or Jim, I think we're going to take Joe Madden. And so we had a lot of laughs over that. But when the point of that is that if you sat down and you wrote down me or Dexter, Hayward or Moreland, Sarge, or who was in left primarily? In 16, Zobrist.
Yeah,
But Zobrist played more than one position. So
yeah, Zobrist was they platooned him all over. Was it Hap?
No, Hap wasn't there.
No, Hap wasn't.
But anyway,
there.
if you went around the infield, you know,
Schwarber was left.
Or
yeah.
Bryant, you know, we could have some concessions like, okay, we'll take Bryant, Russell, Sandberg, and Rizzo, and Jody, and you know the fans they wanted Sarge, and they wanted Moreland.
Oh man.
And I got my share of votes. But, you know, for me, Dexter, I just love that guy.
I loved him.
And so you can make that a pick 'em for me. But when you compare the two rosters, Sutcliffe or Lester, I don't know. You know, it's hard to pick your team. And I'll guarantee whichever team you pick, that other team might kick your butt. So that was an interesting question. So if you compare the two,
yeah,
I think it's still a good question.
I think it is a good question. Here's another good question. The 84 Cubs are arguably the second greatest team to not reach the World Series behind the 69 Cubs, who were anchored Hall of Famer, Quartet, Ernie Banks, Billy Williams, Ron Santo, and Fergie Jenkins. What was like out of all of that, who do you think would be the best of the two, honestly? But if you could look back at 69, what would they say and what would you say?
Well, they're like big brothers to us till today. And Randy Hundley, I've done his fantasy camp 35, 36 times.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, that kind of put a pause on it. But nonetheless, knowing all those guys over the years, became great friends with all of them.
Yeah.
Like big brothers or uncles.
Yep.
And of course, a lot of them have been called up and
yeah.
So, I mean, knowing Billy as a coach, too, I knew Billy, you know, even before that. Randy Hundley, a great friend. I just loved Glenn Beckert. He was one of my favorite people. But all of them, Ernie, all of them. I mean, they were just always so friendly to us. They looked at us like nephews, you know, or little brothers. And, you know, whether it's a fantasy camp or even in 84, I remember them coming around, you know, and you see them in the ballpark or in the dugout or whatever, locker room. And it was an honor to be around them then and still today. I'll see some of them tomorrow night.
And it's awesome to hear you pay it forward with the Chris Bryant Cubs, you know, in the World Series with them and all that good stuff. So that's really cool that the camaraderie is still there.
I honeymooned with that team. You know, we talked about my wife and I got married.
That was really cool.
We got married on Sunday, October 2nd.
I'm telling you, we could have had 2 podcasts today. We might be on to something. We might just do like road trips and podcasts and turn it on. You know what I mean? So
we drove up here to Chicago on Tuesday, October 4th, to begin the playoffs October 7th, because I had inked a deal with Fox 32 with Lou Canellis to do the pre and post game for the playoffs. So we postponed our honeymoon. So when we're done with that, we'll go wherever. Well, November 6th, after the parade, we drove home. So we decided to call that a honeymoon. We honeymooned with the Cubs in 2016 during that playoff, that beautiful World Series run. And I wouldn't change a thing.
Full disclosure, guys, I didn't hear any complaints from the.
No, she's sitting right over there.
Yeah, well, and she was in the back seat when he was telling the story firsthand to me, and I didn't hear any complaints there either. So it might have been a full legitimate.
How many of you would, if you could do your honeymoon over, would spend a month with the Cubs to win the World Series? I mean, come on. So I felt lucky. I had a lot of fans tell me, "You don't know how good you got it," you know?
Yeah.
And I walked out of Cleveland Stadium after Game 7 in a pouring down rain at 2:00 in the morning
Oh,
with
geez.
who? Ryan Sandberg.
Nice.
He was doing the same thing with Comcast with David Kaplan. So we had that reflection and got to walk out of the stadium after they won that World Series in 16 and felt a lot of gratitude that finally, yeah, we saw all of them there. John Cusack, all of them.
Cusack, baby.
Yeah. And Cusack had me up in his suite during the home games at Wrigley during that time. And so I didn't have to go to the press room and eat a cruddy hot dog. So it was a lot of Eddie Vedder dancing with my mom on Friday night of the first playoff series, that kind of stuff, that kind of famous Cub fan guys and others. I mean, there was plenty of women too. I mean, Bonnie Hunt, among others, Chelios. I mean, everybody was there, as you might imagine, in that little circle of love. And I wouldn't change a thing. What a honeymoon. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Chelios because that gives us our next commercial break. Friends, celebrate the new year and upcoming NFL playoffs with a tequila experience like no other. NHL Hall of Famer Chris Chelios, revolutionary El Bandito Yankee. This authentic to the smooth core, additive-free, 100% blue agave ultra premium tequila has changed the game with its extraordinary, wowing, and thirst-quenching taste. Get yours at elbanditoyankee.com, for nothing compares to the tequila heaven of El Bandito Yankee. So,
well,
Bob,
you know who would love that? My old buddy, the Sarge.
Yeah,
Gary
Sarge?
Matthews. Yeah, he's a tequila aficionado.
I wish we could have got him up here. That would have been so cool. Bob, the game is played wildly different today than when you played and coached for the Cubs. Today's game is dictated by analytics, launch angles, and power numbers. Do you think the game has gotten better or worse because of that?
Well, I mean, and I say this affectionately too. I mean, I love the era and the guys I got to play with and against. I wouldn't change a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're smarter today in a lot of ways than we in our generation. First of all, their nutrition, the way they take care of the players. They're smarter in that regard. The way they prepare themselves, their bodies, the workouts, everything they do. I mean, we sort of knock, I mean, John Kruk I played with in Philadelphia, and Krucky, he'd knock a plate of Doritos off his stomach in February, and he'd hit 350. So we had a little different approach to things back in the 80s.
Wait, are you talking about batting average or weight?
Batting average.
Okay.
But you know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of, we didn't lift weights. I mean, we didn't have that kind of structure, but they wanted us lean and flexible. And that was just part of the approach back then. So I admire a lot of things they do today, in particular the nutrition part of it. I mean, we were eating double cheeseburgers from McDonald's.
Oh, baby.
Now they got chefs and everything's like perfect,
Yeah.
So my wife's a wonderful cook. So we eat good for us and in large part. And so I appreciate that. I'd like to have, I've even talked to teammates about, Jody and I were talking once about, boy, I wonder what it would have been like to have played our entire career completely sober, never have a beer.
Might have won that shit.
And he said, nah. But I do. I admire a lot of the approach they take today.
Those pitch clocks, bigger bases. Do you think that the MLB rule changes? Do you think they're a step in the right direction to creating a faster pace, more entertaining game filled with more hits, strategy, and small ball? Or
I'm not a fan of the pizza box bases. I'll admit that. Being an old
pizza
base stealer, and that's about 2 or 3 inches bigger, and it's not 90 feet now. It's 89 feet. 9 inches or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's kind of a sacred cow, messing with 90 feet. I don't really like that, but the pitchers, with the 2 moves and that's it. And I think that reduces some of the strategy of being a good base stealer, makes it a little more, I don't know. I just think it kind of fudges it up a little bit, but I also understand. I do like the clock. I like moving the game. We did it naturally. Our generation, the game was like 2 hours and 20 minutes, but we'd play a 2-hour game of Carlton and Sutcliffe. Well, not Sut. Sut was like a 2 hour and 45 minute because he stepped off too much and shook off Jody. And so he took a little longer, but you had two great pitchers who go out there and go 9 innings, maybe Fernando and Carlton or something, and it would be over in 2 hours. Maddox, yeah, Greg Maddox, no doubt. No doubt.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah,
today,
good point.
they've got those guys, but they don't go 9 anymore, really, to speak of. But I like the game. Kyle does it. Yeah. Yeah, so I like it. I like that they move the game mainly for you guys watching because I'm watching. You know,
Yeah.
I was a fan before I played and still am. And if I'm going to watch a game, we were talking on the way down, I get tired of watching walk, strikeout, home run. Well, I want to see the ball in play. I want the hitters to be capable of move the ball around the field. Guys make plays. One thing they do today, I think that I really admire is, boy, do they make plays. I see a lot of great plays being made all the time. And so in that regard, I really admire them. They're obviously putting in the work and making the effort. It takes some, concentration to go out there and be a good defender. And so I like it.
The Cubs are coming off an 83-79 season, almost making it to the National League playoffs. From your vantage point, how close are the Cubs to World Series contenders? How many, if you could put a clock on it, years, whatever.
Well, and I think Dallas Green, who was my godfather of baseball, and
Okay.
a lot of us, Rhino included, his approach was always, if we can just get to the All-Star break around 500 or better, then moves can be made and you can set up a team to win for the rest of the stretch. So that team that we have now is capable. I think we were talking earlier again about pitching. We got to have it.
Yeah.
So they went out. What they do? They signed the lefty.
Yep.
From Japan. I don't know much about him. Maybe somebody in here does know more than me, but that's probably the number one thing. If we can get some pitching depth, then anything can happen. Because the lineup wise, I don't know what's going to happen with Bellinger, but I'm going to ask tomorrow night. I really like that guy.
Oh man.
If their offensive personality stays similar or gets better, third baseman might be in play. I don't know. Then I like their chances.
Yeah, and if you were Jed Hoyer, Carter Hawkins, obviously you want to get Belly right on the free agency for the offseason for building a better team of 2024. Is there anybody else that you would like to go out and get personally?
Well, I'm a little biased.
Yeah.
So I want you to you got to establish who's going to play every day, and be that leadoff guy and set the table and get that offensive ignition started. I think there's still, since Dexter left, we've still kind of been looking for that consistent guy. And I love Schwarber, one of my favorite cats.
Yeah,
he's over in Philly. I saw him in August.
Okay.
Leadoff hitter. I don't know, but he plays every day.
Yeah.
So a different style, but whatever you want style wise, I like having that consistent guy at the top, or 2 or 3 guys, really a 1-2-3 punch, we'll call it. With Rhino and Gary Matthews, and when I was over in Philly with Rose and Sarge, having a consistent act to set the table for, hopefully a monster or 2 in the middle, like a Mike Schmidt in the way back, or, I think the also that element of speed too. If you got the 2 or 3 guys, Nico, Happ, Bellinger, guys like that are consistent at the top, I like your chances offensively. But so priority 1 for me, let's have a leadoff guy.
It's funny that you say that. You and I got a lot more in common than I thought, because when I first started podcasting, everybody was not really complaining, but they were kind of like, we see a pattern here. All of the celebrities and all of the alumni that you're interviewing are all Chicago Bears offensive linemen. What's up with that? And I'm like, well, I was an offensive lineman, so.
You're not going to move the ball without you.
No. Definitely not going to move the ball without us. That's for sure, man. We could use some of them right now, couldn't we? For the Bears. We got 3 more questions to close up, and then we'll let you get off to the audience where they're anticipating meeting you, and questions and answers, autographs, all this great stuff. Shohei Ohtani record $700 million. What would you do with that money?
Well, that's Hyatt money, isn't
it? Yeah. That deal, is that good or bad for the game?
Well, look, I think we'd all agree, if I don't care what vocation you're in.
Yeah.
If they're paying it, you're taking it.
Yeah.
And if you're good at it, you deserve it. Ohtani, I mean, he deserves every bit of it. I mean, he's a real unique talent and player. All I've heard is positive about him off the field as well, in the locker room, that sort of stuff. So you earn it, and at that level, they don't give that to, just to stay in shape. You got to earn it big time. So, I'm glad he's in the National League. We get a peek at him, and if you're good, you probably run into him in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, and he deserves a shot at that. So does Mike Trout over there, and they've both been kind of. I was talking to Joe Madden about that. Having that chance to play in the postseason.
Wow.
That's really what he's looking to accomplish, and for that I admire him, and look forward to watching him in person a little bit more. And you probably see him on plenty of national broadcasts with the Dodgers. That team's setting up pretty strong. So,
oh my gosh, unbelievable! Yeah,
we'll
when
see.
You think they can't rake in more talent, they go out and get this guy. I'm like, are you kidding me? What's going on here?
That's why they play the game. So you got to put a personality together. That molds well, and they look good on paper. But you might run into a team at Wrigley in October that matches up okay. And
I love it.
See.
I love it. You hear that, guys? So who's your favorite player to watch today?
Well, it's hard to have one. I live in Kansas City, so Bobby Witt Jr. is a shortstop, young guy there in Kansas City. He's real fun to watch.
Yeah.
Wonderful young talent. But obviously I'm a Cub guy, and I've become friendly with Ian Happ and Nico Horner, kind of two of my faves. Good young men and fun to be around. And Ian joined us outfield Gold Glove guys. There's only 4 of us in Cub history, and I'm the first. I'm the oldest. Well, Andre Dawson's I think he's a year or 2 older than me, but he was the second one. And then I think the best defender, other than Gary Maddox, who I played with in Philly, the best defender I've watched in a Cub uniform in the outfield is Jason Hayward. I mean, they don't come much better than Jason defensively, and so being a part of that foursome is pretty cool. So I'm an Ian Happ guy along with Nico, I think. Okay, cool. What's an average life for Bobby Dernier these days? What do you got going on aside from the grandkids and the boys and all that? Well, with my wife as my witness, I've averaged over 100 rounds of golf the last 11 years. Oh, baby. Since they made me quit coaching. I really didn't want to quit, but baseball has a way of sending you home before you want to go home. Yeah. And so I centered everything around grandkids and my wife, and we look after my mom, and I've got 100 plus tee times a year. That's about all I'm into. Well, there you go. Yeah. Hey, thanks for joining us on the show. Thank you for joining us at Bridges Scoreboard and answering the score. One last thing, one of our close friends that is a part of this podcast, the whole reason why you answered the bell, I believe, is that connection with Steve Mongo McMichael. Right now, he's looking down to we're at the stretch, finalist for, Hall of Fame. What if you had one thing to say as far as Mongo, what would that be? Yeah, Mongo and that whole group, I can tell you from being here in the mid 80s, those of you that were, the Cubs hadn't won in 39 years. We won the division in 84. That really lit up the city. And then, of course, the Bears were on the front porch. And then they won the whole thing in '85. And then some guy named Michael was dribbling down the street. And so it was a great time to be in Chicago. You know, it was like, and Mongo and Hampton. And I got to know Gary Finsick and Jim McMahon pretty well during those times. We go to Ditka's and grand opening of Ditka's restaurant, all that. So it was a wonderful time to be around. And I can tell you, Mongo included, all those guys, really a special group. Maybe the greatest team in NFL history, in my opinion. And, you know, without Steve, they wouldn't have been. So we'll put it that way. And I think all of his teammates would agree. And so prayers with him and his wife and family. And certainly glad you invited me down too.
Hey, thanks for answering the bell. Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate you. All right. All right, folks, on that note, we're just going to say thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. And at 8 o'clock, we're going to have Pinky Leroy Pinkston. He's going to be on our YouTube and Facebook, and catch him. He's going to be going over the Bears and the Bulls and everything that's been going on with that, as far as, you know, the shakeup of the OC, the quarterback coach, and what's to come. So check all that out, and then the Bulls streak and Levine coming back and all that good stuff. So thanks again, and thank you, Bridges Scoreboard. Thank you, Jeff Bridges. Thank you, Scott Bridges, for inviting us out. Appreciate you all, and have a good night.